All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Welcome to our second session of our four-part webinar series. Today, we're going to cover SEO Basics. My name's Sabrina Clark. I'm on the marketing team here at Brain Yourself. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to type it into the question bar on your GoToWebinar panel that should be on the right hand of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end. We'll also be recording this webinar and emailing it to everyone after the fact. So if you miss anything or have to jump off for a meeting or whatnot, it will be accessible to you. And let's just get started. So just a quick overview of our series schedule. We already had part one last week, which was laying the foundation. We emailed it to everyone who registered. And if you registered after we hosted the webinar, you were brought to a blog page on our blog that has the recording. But if for whatever reason you can't access it, please just let me know. My email will be at the end, and I'll make sure I get you part one. Today, we're going to be doing search engine optimization basics, so SEO. And then next week, we'll do ongoing content creation, and then we'll wrap it up in 2 weeks with some advanced techniques. So in honor of Thursday, we're going to do a little throwback Thursday and quickly recap what we did on last week's webinar. We discussed how building a positive online presence and building your online reputation is really a three-step process. First, you need to create high-quality websites and profiles. You need to optimize them so that they will rank well in Google. And then you need to continuously update them over time. So last week, we focused on the create portion. So we covered how to identify your current online reputation, whether you're 100% happy with it and it's positive and you want to keep it positive. If you're dealing with a negative, if you have an issue where you have a very common name and you're trying to stand out, regardless of what your online reputation is, the process of improving it is the same. So that's building really high quality websites and profiles, making sure they rank well in Google, and updating them over time. We talked about how to set up a personal website, and actually in this webinar, we're going to get a little bit more in the nitty gritty on the SEO factors that you should be taking into consideration when building your website. Getting on the right social networks. We told you, which social networks you should be getting on, how to set them up. And again, we're going to go into them a little bit more in depth today. And that brings us to it, SEO Basics. If you're not familiar with the definition, it's basically, search engine optimization is the process of, creating or improving. So creating new content or improving content that you already have to make sure it shows up as high as possible for a specific keyword. You might be familiar with the term, businesses use it to get their websites to rank higher for certain keywords. If I have a restaurant, I might want to, rank for for my restaurant name, and maybe, if it's an Italian restaurant in New York City, I might want to rank for, Italian restaurant in New York City. But in the case of online reputation management, it's your name. So you're optimizing everything around your name. And again, just to quickly recap, today we're in this second part of the three-step process. So optimizing everything you have and making sure that it has the best chance of ranking well in Google. It isn't a guarantee, everything that we're going to talk about isn't necessarily a guarantee, but what we're doing is we're arming you with the tools to have the best chance of creating that web presence. So basically, we want to optimize your sites and profiles to rank well in search engines for your name. So whether it's your website, social media profiles that we created, everything should be about you and well represented of you, but we also want to make sure that it will rank well when people Google you. So just to start, search engine algorithms are complex. Google itself has released many, many iterations, many of which are named after animals. So panda, penguin, as you can see here, pigeon. There are so many factors that go into their algorithms. They're incredibly smart. And the whole goal of these algorithms is to provide the best search experience to its users. Now, there is a way, to not necessarily manipulate these algorithms, but to use it to your advantage. And that's what really good SEO is. So keeping in mind that these algorithms are complex, There are a number of factors that you need to understand that exist both on page, so what's going on your website, and off page, things you don't necessarily have control over, but you can influence. And I'm going to go into each one of these today, but just to a basic overview, your on-page factors is the actual architecture and structure of your website. Keyword and content, making sure your name is actually on there. Relevancy, keeping it active. Google wants to present the most relevant information to its users. So it doesn't want to display a website that, hasn't been updated in 5 years. It wants to provide really fresh, relevant content. So that's a major factor that we'll talk about. And then your off-page stuff. Like I said, this is stuff that you can't necessarily control, but you can have influence over. Things like links to your content or sharing it on social media. So the architecture and structure of your website. Last week, we talked about some basics of setting up your website, where to go to get one, what type of content you should include on it. But right now I'm gonna really take you into some more of the SEO aspects. So ensuring your website is as search engine friendly as possible. And I understand, before I jump into this, I am doing this at a very basic overview. We could have hours and hours and hours of webinars about SEO. These are just the basics that you should be aware of. If it does get too complex, by all means, shoot me a question, or if you have a question about something I didn't cover, let me know. So making sure, getting back to your website, structuring your site well, making sure that there's a mainline navigation. It's really important that your website is navigable by people easily, but also search engines. And, the way Google and the major search engines have kind of always approached this is the more user-friendly your website is, the better chance it will have of ranking well. And one of the basics of that is, can people navigate it? Is it easy? Is there a tab for about? Is there a tab for contact info that they can easily get? That's what I'm talking about by mainline navigation. Including your name throughout key areas of the website. If you want something to rank well for your name, then it has to have your name in key places. The domain, obviously, the content of the body. And then these are some more technical SEO aspects, but they're really important. The first is a title tag. Now, I have down here an example. In search engines, think of the title tag as the description of what the website is. You do have control over what the title tag is. I put here WordPress all-in-one SEO plugin. I mentioned on our last webinar that one of the tools that we really recommend for building websites is WordPress. And one of the reasons is because it is easy to use, and it does arm you with a lot of tools to make your websites as search engine friendly as possible. There is a plugin that you can install on your, through WordPress, and it's called the All-in-One SEO Pack. And what that really is it's a good guideline to make sure that you have these SEO elements in there. So there will be a field to, fill out the title tag. And it's short, it's about 65 to 75 characters. So if it's about your website, you want to make sure that your name is showing up, in the beginning of that title tag to make sure it's showing up in search engines. And then below it, this little description is your meta tag, which is basically the description of your website. So whereas the title tag said, let's say Sabrina Clark's website, Sabrina Clark's personal website, that meta tag might have a little bit more description. It allows more characters, about 160. So, if you extend beyond 160, you'll get these little ellipses. So you want to make sure that, you get everything before you run out of characters. So my meta tag for my website might be, Sabrina Clark, marketing at BrandYourself's personal website. I would probably write a little bit better description, but on the fly, that's what, that's important. Now, the title tag and the meta tags are a huge aspect of SEO, and a lot of people overlook them simply because they're unaware of them. And the reason for this is these tags are really communicating to search engines what this content is about. And when people find it on search engines, it's communicating to people looking you up on what the content is about. So this is an example. I searched for Pete Kistler, who's a co-founder at Brand Yourself. I'm sure you've heard his story. So you'll see that his website, which we'll actually take a peek at in a little bit, Pete Kistler is his title tag. It has his domain here. And then in his meta tag, you have a little description about Pete. So you get a sense of, how it works. And you'll notice his profile works the same way. Now, the profiles, you don't have as much control over the architecture. If you're setting up a Twitter account, you're not controlling the actual architecture of your Twitter profile. You can control the content on it, but your website is where you really have the full control over the architecture. So here's an example of Pete's website, and you'll notice down here, we looked at it last week. You'll notice that he has in his navigation, home, press, interests, music, blog, contact. It's very clear. That press button, if you would, is where you're going to find press about Pete Kistler. That contact, tab is where you're going to find his contact information. So this is all stuff that you want to take into consideration. I also will say a lot of people get hung up sometimes on the SEO. A great thing to keep in mind is, design it for user experience with SEO in mind. But, if a person really can't navigate it well, it's probably not going to translate well in an SEO aspect either. So really quick, purchasing a domain name, you definitely on your personal website want to have a domain of your name. It's really cheap. It costs about $12 a year, so inexpensive. It can cost a little more depending on how common your name is. And just the real important part here is make sure that you're using your full name or the name that people are going to look you up as. And it's important that you're consistent. If your business name is John Smith, you should be using John Smith in everything that you create. You shouldn't make your Twitter profile Johnny Smith, your website John Smith, and your LinkedIn profile J Smith. That's not going to work. That's not going to indicate to Google that the information is about John Smith. So when someone goes to look up John Smith on a search engine, it's not going to show all the properties out there. So make sure you're using the name. I always say you should be using the name on your business card or the name that's in your email signature. Think of what someone will actually Google when they look you up. So the next aspect of SEO is keyword and content. And this is so important. All these factors are important, but this one is really up there. And that's getting back to what I was saying. You need to have your name throughout these places on your website and your profile. Again, use your real name or the name that's on your business card, in your email signature, your professional name. Just make sure it's consistent. And make sure that when you're signing up for a new social media profile or, you're building out an existing profile, make sure that you're using your real name throughout. So you'll notice on the left is, a Twitter handle. For John Smith, he got, John Smith. It's much, much better than Big JS 151. And then that goes for the bios below, writing the bios in the third person. Getting your name on that page is really important. We covered this last week, so I won't take too much time on it, but these are just, examples of writing a really good bio. You want to make sure that it's in the third person. So whether you're setting up your Twitter profile or your LinkedIn or you're writing the about me for your website, you want to make sure that you have a really strong bio and that you have multiple bios for your different websites. Start with an intro sentence that kind of sums up what you're about. So for John Doe, he's a marketing executive in New York City, specializing in tech. Highlight, accomplishments and achievements from there. You do want to write in the third person so you can get your name in there, but don't think that every single sentence has to start, John Doe is, John Doe is, John Doe is. You want to make it natural and, well written interesting. And remember to have several variations for different profiles. This one's very important because of duplicate content. Google doesn't like duplicate content. We'll get to that in a little bit. But just make sure that you have several variations for your different profiles. And then, here's just an example of Pete's About Me page. You'll notice that he was able to get his name in there while also seeming natural, and it doesn't have to sound stuffy or that it's too convoluted or anything. He has his name in there, and that's it's a really great bio. So here's an example of, this is actually Patrick Ambron, who's our CEO. This is an example of how you can really set up a good social media profile so that it's SEO friendly. You'll notice his handle is Patrick Ambron. That's the little thing in the gray. His identifying name is Patrick Ambron. Very frequently with social media profiles, your username is separate from your public display name. So in this case, Twitter gives you 2 chances to get your name in there. So if maybe your handle isn't exactly what you want it to be, your display name definitely should be your full name. He has his bio is in the third person. He works at BrandYourself. He talks about, what he likes to tweet about. So what you can expect when you come to his Twitter profile. And then he has a link to not only his BrandYourself profile, but you also, on Twitter, there's a place to put his website. So he has a link to his website. And he's also filled out any other information that Twitter allows him. He's really active. He, has over 4,000 tweets. You don't necessarily have to have 4,000 tweets, but the fact that he's active, keeps that profile relevant and keeps it fresh in Google's eye. He's following a good chunk of people. He's, retweeting things that he finds relevant, and he's also tweeting his own things. So do a real mix there to, keep your profile active in terms of, an SEO perspective. That takes me to relevancy. Post content regularly to keep your websites and your profiles up to date. One of the easiest ways to keep your website up to date, you might be thinking, once my website's set up, nothing much is really changing. So one of the best ways to, keep it up to date is to add a blog aspect to it, and blog about, topics relevant to your industry, things you're interested in. What that'll do is, from an SEO perspective, it keeps your website relevant. It's adding new content to search engines for you, and it's also adding authority to you. It's adding authority to your page from an SEO standpoint, but on the other aspect, it's also adding authority as to your personal brand. If you're a lawyer and you're tweeting about the industry and relevant court cases, and maybe you write a blog post about frequently asked questions that you get from your clients, if someone comes across your website, they really see that you're an authority in your field, and they're much more likely to want to work with you. So use that blog as an opportunity to do that. I will also say that rich media ranks really well. These are things like images, videos. I also put SlideShare there because it's a very great tool to get content out there about you. If you haven't signed up for a SlideShare account, I at least recommend checking them out, and incorporate work you've already put in. It might seem like an overwhelming task, but if you're already answering the same questions in a client email, or if you're giving a presentation, use that as content for the web. Maybe turn those common questions into a blog post that you can refer people to if they ask that question again. Or if you gave a presentation somewhere, put that presentation on SlideShare or on YouTube or Vimeo or one of the video sites. Really use that content to your advantage. Some blogging strategies. Again, WordPress started as a blogging platform, really. So you can very easily set up a blog there. Medium's a really good one. Tumblr is great. If you already have a blog on another platform that I didn't mention, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it just isn't probably I just haven't mentioned it. So as long as you have a blog, that's great. Topics, frequently asked questions, industry trends, things that are going on in the news. Get creative. a good guideline from an SEO standpoint is, about 250 to 500 words. You don't want to, while it's great that you're blogging, if you're blogging, one sentence, it's really not going to, do much for you. In fact, it could harm you potentially if you're doing it too frequently. Put that effort into one really great blog post a month versus worrying about, getting a 50-word blog post out every single day. Quality is much better than quantity of blog posts in that sense. And then make sure to include any appropriate titles and tags. So fill out all the information, regardless of what platform you're using. Pretty much any blogging platform, before you are able to hit publish, there's a number of things that you can do to your post to help it be as search engine friendly as possible. And, something includes, titling it well. Instead of saying, instead of titling something, let's say you're a real estate agent and you're writing a post about common things to do in your area or industry trends, let's say purchasing trends. Instead of writing the post and titling it, purchasing trends in New York City, while that's great, it's not as good as, maybe 5 things you need to know about buying real estate in New York City. That's kind of long, but get creative with the title. There are tags also typically which categorize your blog. So you want to, tag it properly. Typically they'll recommend tags for you based on the platform that you're using. But just keep in mind to, fill all that content out. And then update your social media profiles regularly. I mentioned it a little earlier when we were, looking at Patrick's Twitter profile. Share interesting things, follow key influencers, update your social media profile. To increase engagement, always try to include rich media. So whether it's an image that goes along with your article or a video, make sure to include that as well. And then now we're on to links and social sharing. So this is the next SEO factor. A link is basically a vote for that content to rank well in Google. So the more links that a website has, the more likely that it is to rank well in search engines. And the rationale there is if people are linking to it, then they must be interested in it and it must be relevant content, and therefore other people would be interested. So let's rank it a little bit higher in search engines. So it's important that, you're getting links to your website, whether it's putting it on your personal website, sharing the link in the email signature, your email signature, putting it, if you have a Twitter profile, make sure that you're linking to your personal website and vice versa. And that really brings us into then the link structure. So this is a really important part of SEO. So now that you have your websites, let's say you have a personal website, you have a couple social media profiles, it's really important that you strategically link them together so that it, one, signifies to Google, hey, all of this content is related and therefore help it rank a little bit better. But also, it's helping to drive traffic to one another. So if someone comes to your website and they see a link to your, they're interested in you, they really liked your website, and they see a link to your Twitter profile, you're now getting, having attention put onto your Twitter profile. So it's all good things that are happening. So this is an example of how you might link your content together. So John Doe, he's got, 2 websites. One is his main website and one is sort of his professional website. So he's got, BrandYourself.com, and it has all the information about him. It's that central hub of everything that you want to know about John Doe, his, what he does for his, business dealings, interests, things he does outside of work. That's where you go. We also have johndoe.net. That's his professional site. So it's more about the fact, it's more about his real estate site, let's say. So that's what we would call sort of a niche site. It's a site that's dedicated to John Doe real estate agent. Whereas johndoe.com is just, everything you want to know about John Doe. And then you'll notice here that he's got, a bunch of really great profiles set up, and he's making sure to link them together. So on his Twitter profile, he has a link to his main website. On his Tumblr, he's got a link to his main website. And that goes vice versa. So when you go to JohnDoe.com, he might have a tab that says, contact John Doe, or learn more about John Doe. And it'll be like, here are all the places that you can find out about me on the web. Here's my Twitter profile, my Tumblr, my Google+, Facebook, things like that. So that's how you're really going to, this link structure is super important. Now, you can get strategic based on, what you're trying to accomplish. If you're dealing with a negative and something is ranking right below the negative, let's say your website, you might try to direct all of the links there in order to overcome the negative. That's where you're really getting into some more strategy territory. But at a very basic level, you should just understand that if you have a website and a profile, you should be linking them together. And this is actually an example, this link structure right here is very similar to the link structures that we build for our clients at Brand Yourself. When you sign on for our Head Start or concierge services and we're getting ready to build these websites and profiles for you, we really strategize on how to get the most progress for you and accomplish the goal that you're looking to accomplish. So we put a lot of thought into this link structure and, how we should structure it for you. A couple of SEO warnings, be careful. The first is be careful of black hat techniques. You might have heard that term thrown around before. But there's black hat SEO, which is, the bad SEO. And then there's white hat SEO. White hat is everything that we've been covering in this webinar so far. It's the right way to go about it. It's the way that, Google will reward. But there are things that you can do that are maliciously, if you would, game the system, and that's black hat techniques. Google's getting smarter and smarter, and these are becoming more and more outdated and can actually harm your search results. So people aren't even able to use them that frequently anymore. But there are still companies out there that, they'll guarantee really fast results or guarantee results. That's a big red flag. If anyone's guaranteeing that, you might be looking at a company that's employing black hat techniques, which, you might, see some results in the first, few weeks, but then, your results could tank and you just never, you can end up getting penalized and dealing with like such a big mess in the long run. So definitely avoid the black hat techniques. Another, aspect of it that Google's really starting to, crack down on is duplicate content. So basically what this means is, Google wants really relevant content, but also unique content as well. It's really not interested in, showing in search results, the same content over and over and over and over and over again. And it's starting to penalize duplicate content. Now, you should be okay. I always like to say, when I cover a section like this, with the kind of the warnings of SEO, if you're not intentionally trying to game the system, you should be okay. But you should also keep in mind that, there are some things that you might unintentionally fall into. The duplicate content penalty is one of the reasons why we tell you to write unique bios for your different websites. If you have the same few paragraphs of bio repurposed, in 20 different places, that's really not going to help you, and it could potentially harm you. So make sure that you're writing unique bios. If what it's really trying to prevent is you taking a website and cloning it and cloning it and cloning it and cloning it, or taking one blog post and republishing it in 25 different places. So as long as you're not intentionally, creating the duplicate content, you should be good to go. I would just be careful, if anything, about your bios and making sure that they're unique. The next sort of like thing, black hat technique to avoid is keyword stuffing. So this is basically the process of, all right, if I want to rank for John Smith, I'm just going to get John Smith as many freaking times into that website as possible, and there are even, other techniques that people use like cloaking, or if it's a white website, they'll just write it in white font over and over and over again, the word John Smith. This is definitely not the way to go about it. If you're writing a bio, you don't have to have your name in there 40 times. As long as it's in there, 2 to 3 times for a solid bio, that's more than enough. So don't go too crazy about stuffing your name everywhere, because it could harm you. Again, this is one of those instances where unless you're intentionally trying to game the system, you're probably okay. But just keep in mind that, it could potentially harm you if you are doing that. The other, thing I would really caution against is buying links. I mentioned links are a good thing when it comes to SEO, and it is a vote for your website to rank higher. But, in moderation, everything that I talked about today, don't take it to an extreme, because that could harm your SEO. So, just stay away from anything that's, buying links, or a company that's offering to, purchase a number of links for you, or, they're very vague about how they're going to go about their process. If they can't explain the process, they're probably employing some black hat stuff. Everything I talked about today is stuff we do at Brand Yourself, and we're very open about it. We have these webinars, and, we try to explain the process as much as possible. If you're dealing with a company that can't or won't explain the process, then they're probably doing some things that you don't want them doing on your behalf. A few things to keep in mind. No one has the magic potion or secret sauce. Unfortunately, Google and all search engines, they're the only ones that truly know how it works and can truly guarantee any changes, because they control it. SEO is giving you the best chance of improving your search results, but there are no guarantees. So again, if a company is promising guarantees, that something's a little fishy there. What SEO can guarantee for you is that it'll give you the best chance of having your websites and profiles rank well. And if you're persistent and keep at it, you should start to see really great results, but there are no guarantees. And these things take time. Links with more authority tend to be more difficult to see movement. So if you're dealing with a negative, like let's say you have a negative New York Times article, that's going to be way harder to move than if you're trying to move a blog post to the first page, or trying to move your personal website to the first page. It takes time. It could take anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. So even if you start doing things now, you might see some movement initially, because that's that relevancy factor coming in. But you probably won't see significant movement for a few weeks or even a few months, depending on how difficult your particular situation is. So make sure to keep at it. And also that you want to start doing this stuff now, so that, a few months from now, you've seen progress. You've made it that far. Google's constantly updating its algorithm, so that's why it does take time, and you should start to see a lot of movement. And relevancy is on your side. So if you are dealing with a negative, the more outdated your negative gets, and the fresher that your content gets, if you're constantly putting out fresh content and relevant content, it's only going to help. And everything I talked about with SEO, it's actively helping you build a positive online presence right now, but it's also protecting you against anything negative in the future. Everything I talked about is helping you build authority to your websites and profiles, and that's huge. That authority means, if let's say a negative pops up, it's going to be much more difficult for it, to move your website off the first page if your website has all this authority that you've been working to build. So also keep that in mind as well. It is a defense. It's a defense process as much as, and a tool as much as it is a proactive tool. And this is just a really great quote from Matt Cutts. He's the head of Google's web spam team. So he's kind of in charge of, communicating to everyone how Google's algorithms works. He lets everyone know when there's been an update and what to look out for and any changes. But he just says, focus on creating high quality sites that create a good user experience and employ white hat SEO methods instead of black hat tactics. I think that it just really sums it up great in the fact that, just focus on creating really high quality websites and profiles and content. And yes, use everything I talked about to make sure that it's as SEO friendly as possible. But, don't get caught up in, getting fast results with black hat tactics or potentially damaging your results. Just go about it the right way. And everything we talked about is the right way to go about it. Before I jump into questions, which I see we have a few already, really quickly, how Brand Yourself can help. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I'll go over it really quickly. We have on our left our do-it-yourself tool. And what this actually does is brings you through a lot of what we talked about today. So making sure that if you have a Twitter profile, it's going to walk you through the boost steps to make it as search engine friendly as possible. And of course, that's free to use and about $99 a year to upgrade. On our right, we have our Head Start service. So what we're doing in Head Start is we're building you those websites and profiles, and we're doing all the SEO work to make sure it's as search engine friendly as possible. And then we leave you with a plan so that you can manage it going forward. So if you have any, you really get that head start. You don't have to worry about the SEO, did I build my website right? Or, what about this? What about that? You could start out with your websites and profiles and really take it from there. And then our concierge service in the middle is, we handle everything basically. We build the websites and profiles for you, with that link structure that I talked about that's so important. And then we manage it for you over time. We make sure that everything that you have out there on the web about you is a search engine as friendly as possible, that, we're adding content for you, we're blogging on your behalf, creating content, updating social media profiles, making sure that your websites, if there's an update to Google's algorithms, we make sure that your websites won't be affected by it. We really, take everything that we're going to talk about in all of these webinars and handle it for you. So those are our tools and services. Before I jump into questions, we always offer this free personal branding consultation, and you can sign up for it one of two ways. One, you can use this link right here, just type it into your bar, bit.ly/BY consult, and it'll take you to a scheduling page to schedule it. Or you can feel free to send me an email, and I'll make sure that, you get scheduled in the books. But what this consultation really does is, we take a look at your current search results, your current situation, and we really, provide you a game plan for how you can improve your results going forward. So even if you decide not to work with us, you at least have that game plan and, know this is what I'm going to have to do if I want to see results. If you have an existing website or you're just not sure if you're, going about it the right way, maybe you're confused about the structure of your website from an SEO perspective, I also recommend that the consultation because we could take a look at it. But it's just a really great offering that we offer at Brand Yourself. It can really arm you with and answer a lot of questions and really arm you with a lot of knowledge. So I recommend that, especially if you're getting ready to dive into improving your online reputation. So I'm going to take a few questions. If I am unable to get to your question, because I don't want to take too much of your time today, my email is right there. Please feel free to email me, and I'd be more than happy to help. Again, I just went over the basics of SEO, so it's important that you understand that there are many other factors that get very, very complex. But I really just wanted you in this webinar understand, how search engines are really working and how your content is being how you can optimize your content for your own benefit. So to jump into a few questions, I noticed someone said that that they had lost audio. I seem to be good on my end, but if this is the case for multiple people, we do record all of these and we'll be sending it out in a few hours once the video processes, so you can go back if you missed anything. Okay, so someone would like a little bit more clarity about duplicate content. Okay, so duplicate content is a relatively new SEO factor. It's always, been important to have unique content, but about a year ago now, and actually maybe a year and a half ago, one of the Google algorithm updates basically focused on duplicate content. And what it did is, it actually penalized a lot of websites that were using duplicate content practices. For your purpose, from building out your online reputation, it's important to know that you just need to have unique content for everything that you're creating. So that means for your bios, you should be creating a different bio for every single one of your websites and profiles. Now, that doesn't mean you need to, make a completely different profile, because it is going to be the same information about you, it's your bio. But for example, your LinkedIn bio should be different from the bio on, let's say, your main website. And you can tailor it to the audience as well. So for on your LinkedIn, that's purely professional focused based on your accomplishments in your career, what you've done, experience, so you can really talk to your career. Whereas your website is a more, holistic view of you about everything you've done. So your bio should reflect everything there. Your Twitter bio is only a few sentences long. So of course, that's easy to kind of manipulate to be unique. I will also say, extending from a bio perspective, avoid, reposting the same content to your site over and over and over again. If you're tweeting it out on social media, that's completely fine. That's not duplicate content at all. This is more, long form content that you're putting on your sites and profiles. So let's say you have a blog on your website. You shouldn't take one blog post and just keep posting it over and over and over again on your website, because that's creating duplicate content and could potentially harm you. The update was really meant to, target people that were doing it maliciously and really exploiting duplicate content. But it is just something to be aware of so that you don't, mistakenly, fall into some problems there. I hope I explained that to the best of my knowledge. We actually wrote a really great blog post about it when the algorithm change came up. So I'll actually include that in the email that I send out with the recording, and that can really explain well, sort of what that update did and what it means for your own search results. Okay, so someone asked about, in line with the duplicate content, that they link their Instagram to their Tumblr. Is that duplicate content? No. So if you're embedding something somewhere, like, your Instagram images, or let's say you embed a video on a blog post, that's not duplicate content. We're more looking at long form written content that's reposted multiple times in multiple places, if that makes sense. So no, if you have if you're embedding images from your Instagram on your Tumblr, that's great. If you're embedding, videos on your Tumblr or anything like that, that's not duplicate content at all. I should have clarified it's more for that, long form text. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to ask, I'm going to answer one more question, but if I wasn't able to get to you, please feel free to let me know. My email's right there, so if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer it after. And if you have a question that's very specific to your own situation, I recommend setting up that consultation. But the last question is going back to that link structure that I I showed, and they were asking, why would you need a .NET website and a .com website? Isn't it better to have just the one website? So here's where you're getting into more of the SEO strategy. So yeah, and it's more of a preference for you as well as a time issue for you, I feel. If you should really be focusing on the one website, start there. But you can also create, and what we do it at Brand Yourself is we create niche websites. And, the example I used for John Doe was his main website had every information about him, that holistic view of John Doe. But one of his niche websites is maybe John Doe Real Estate. And that website is going to speak to more about him as a real estate agent. It might have information that he directs his real estate people to. And he's linking the two together to signify to search engines that they are, that they are relevant and related to one another. And what that's really doing is creating a really strong structure of websites that are building authority off of one another and helping all of them rank higher. So the multiple website thing, it can seem, kind of counterintuitive. Like, why would I want one website that's a hub about me, but then I have this other website? It's more from that strategy perspective. And we also deal with a lot of clients that what they deal with is that they will have, a niche website that they want to set up because they want to direct people there without them, getting busy with the noise of their other stuff. So going back to the John Doe example, if John Doe Real Estate Agent really just wants to show that website to his real estate clients, he can direct them there. Whereas, JohnDoe.com, his main website is kind of, where he sends his business partners or people that are, interested in other things about him. I hope that clarified. Please let me know if it didn't. But that's sort of the reasoning behind the multiple websites. It's more of that strategy of creating a really strong authority of websites and profiles. All right, so I see we have a couple more questions, but they seem to be more geared towards specific situations. And I don't want to confuse anyone on the webinar, so I'm going to I'll shoot you an email after the webinar specifically because I am able to see who's asking them. But I do recommend, if you have a specific question that's about your situation, I would recommend setting up that consultation or sending me an email, and I'd be more than happy to get you to the right person. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. Next week is our third session, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about that ongoing content creation. So now that we've built our websites and profiles, we've made them as search engine friendly as possible. Now the third step is to update them with relevant content. So this webinar is really going to focus on, content creation techniques, how to get the most out of your content, how to create a content plan. Everyone's very busy, so we also talk about how to take one piece of content and utilize it in a number of places so it becomes 10 pieces of content. So it's a really interesting one. If you're really starting it out, I recommend it. Or if you just want a couple ideas about, what to do next, I recommend signing up or attending that one. Because you signed up for, the whole series, you will have the recordings for all of them. So if you are unable to join me on Thursday, we will send out the recording. But that is all I had today. I hope you all have a very good rest of your week and an even better weekend. And I will see you on the next webinar.